Good evening and welcome. My name is Dirk. Thank you for joining our live interactive telephone town hall. We're hosting this event as another way for Mayor Jackson to speak directly with you wherever you are and reach as many Clevelanders and answer as many of your questions as possible. This evening, we'll be discussing coronavirus updates in the city of Cleveland. Now, on July 3rd, Mayor Jackson signed an order making masks mandatory in public places in the city of Cleveland to slow the spread of the coronavirus. As you may know, Mayor Jackson is in his fourth term, which will make him the city of Cleveland's longest-serving mayor. He is a lifelong Clevelander and resident of the Central neighborhood on Cleveland's east side. During his time in office, he has been an advocate for building equity and opportunity for all Clevelanders in all neighborhoods. First, as a city councilman, then as city council president, and now as mayor. We also welcome to the call this evening Police Chief Calvin Williams and Public Safety Director Carrie Howard. Now, as I mentioned, this is an interactive forum, and we would love to hear from you after Mayor Jackson makes a few remarks. We'll take as many questions as possible during this live event. So if you have a question, you can press *3 on your phone keypad at any time. You'll be placed in line to speak with a member of our staff. They'll take down your name and location. Then the next time you hear your name, you will be live on the call and able to ask your question directly. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible this evening. Now, we do receive a lot of questions on our live events, so if we're not able to address your question, well, you can email us at communications@clevelandohio.gov. You can also call 311 or use the Mayor's Action Center number at 216-664-2900. Again, if you have any questions throughout this event, please press *3 on your keypad. Now, I'll turn it over to Mayor Jackson.
Well, good evening. I'm happy that you've all dialed into this Tele-Town Hall. I will start off with some comments around the pandemic.
Jackson, your phone is cut out, sir.
Hello?
Hello, Mayor?
Yes?
Your phone dropped out for just a moment, so we just got the hello, and that was all, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir. I do hear you now.
You hear me now?
Yes,
all
sir.
Right, all right. Well, again, I want to thank everyone for dialing in to the Tele-Town Hall meeting. As was mentioned, I have with me the Director of Safety, Mr. Howard, and Police Chief Williams. And I will open up by talking briefly about the pandemic and COVID-19, and I will turn it over to Director Howard and Chief Williams, who will give a brief update on where we are, not just in terms of COVID-19 and enforcement, but also in general around safety in the city of Cleveland. So let me give it some context in regards to the pandemic. As you know, in around March, it became very obvious that the COVID-19 was spreading not just here in Cleveland, but in many parts of the United States. And there were actions taken, not just in Ohio, but all over the United States in restricting the gathering of people and setting some standards. And as a result of that, the barber shops were closed, beautician shops were closed, theaters were closed, Playhouse Square was closed, the casino was closed. We couldn't have sporting events, bars, restaurants, all these types of venues where we would have some type of mass gathering. All of them were closed. And also there were some directives around staying at home. If you had to go out, wear a mask and keep a social distance and constantly wash your hands. And as a result of that, there was some leveling off of the infections that were occurring. And at the same time, hospitals were reporting that they had fewer people coming to the hospital with symptoms. They had to admit fewer people, and that they had fewer people in intensive care unit. And as you also remember, there was a big conversation throughout America as to should we take off these restrictions in order for the economy to get back going again. In some states, they just flick the switch and say, okay, everything's okay, go back to normal. In Ohio, under Governor DeWine, he took what I believe to be a more rational approach, and that is he looked at how do we reopen the state gradually. And as a result of that, he then sets out some directives as to which types of businesses could be open and what were the restrictions if they did open. And at that time, I began to talk about, and I think on one of these Tele-Town Hall meetings, about we had to be very careful because even though this state of Ohio, through the governor, was taking a reasonable approach, it did mean that people would come in contact with each other, not only in terms of business, but in terms of social gatherings. And as a result of that, there would be more that interaction, there would be a larger likelihood that people would get infected and spread the virus. And that we had to be very cautious and really double and triple down on the educational side and prevention side, because if we did not execute proper prevention behavior, then this gradual opening will result in a new spike that will be far worse than the first spike and will have to result probably in the shutdown of our economy again. Well, as was mentioned earlier this month, I issued a proclamation through a civil emergency that there's a mandatory mask requirement now. And that mandatory mask requirement is not something that we're doing because we want to. It's something that we're doing because we have to. The spread of this virus is really transmitted because of people's proximity to each other in mass gatherings. And in order to better insulate people from transmitting the virus, we have to require that people wear masks. And at the same time, in that as we institute this mask requirement, we've also said to the venues that were allowed to open that they have to change the way they do business and have a capacity that is at least half, if not more, of their capacity in terms of people being in their establishments. And that they have to then require that people coming in either have masks or give masks to people. And that the only way that they could be able to be there without a mask would be if they're eating or drinking something. Now, I know that there are, and then we institute, I think tomorrow, City Council will be working on the passage of a legislation to make it a civil offense of $25 fine if you're cited without a mask. Now, that is, I believe, to be a modest approach because there's already the authority under state law and state mandate to issue a misdemeanor to people who are not wearing masks. Misdemeanors are criminal offenses where you could receive up to 90 days in jail and $750,000 fine, and we did not want that. So we're going to ask Council to pass legislation that will allow for a civil penalty of like a $25 fine. Now, why are we doing this? And I know, again, I'm saying that we're not doing this because we want to. It is a necessity. Since we've had the gradual reopening over the last couple of weeks, we have gone from like an average of low teens to mid-teens and sometimes high teens in terms of new infection on a daily basis. And within the last 7 days, we've had 3 days, at least 3 days, where we've had over 100 infections. And so we're in the red zone, number 3, and the purple zone is number 4. And we are on the verge of going into number 4, which would be the most critical stage in terms of the infection and it being out of control. So it was necessary for us to take measures. And when you look at the demographics of those who are being infected now, the largest group in terms of percentage in the increase are those between 20 and 29. Now, let me wrap this up by saying this. We don't intend to, it is very impractical and to believe that we'll be running around the city of Cleveland citing everyone who don't have a mask on. Not only would that not be effective in terms of the use of our resources and efficient, it will just be chasing our tails. So what we are going to do is we're going to utilize our resources, utilize our personnel in a very strategic way, and target those areas where we believe there's the greatest likelihood of having contracted the virus and passing it on. And that is where you have large gatherings of people who are in close proximity to each other and pretty much in a venue inside. And that boils down to basically bars, restaurants, and nightclubs. And that also correlates with the age group who is now being as a group in terms of increase in infection, that group between 20 and 29. And we're going to apply our efforts there. In doing that, yesterday, today, and I believe tomorrow, our people will be meeting with the owners or the managers of these types of establishments, go through all of what we're going to be doing so they're put on notice, and then we will be enforcing not only the mayor's proclamation, but also the occupancy levels and the way in which those establishments function if they want to stay open. So that is how that's what we're doing. And again, it's not because we're doing this because we want to, we're doing this because we have to. And we will be enforcing it in a strategic way, not have us chasing our tails, but has really having laser focused strategy that will focus on that type of venue and the type of situation that will have the greatest impact on reducing or eliminating the spread of this virus. And that, again, that is where you have large gatherings of people in close proximity to each other and where they're indoors mainly. So with that, I will turn it over to the safety director, Mr. Howard, who would then turn it over to the police chief, and they will just briefly give you some indication as to what they've done in regards to this. And if you have any questions going forward around just safety in general, they will be here to answer that. Director Howard.
Cleveland Public Safety, Police, Fire has been working with our state partners and the Cleveland Health Department with educating businesses on COVID, on the legislation that's going to be presented to City Council, and what we expect and would like to see from them as our partners in combating COVID. We urge businesses to take the steps to facilitate social distancing, take temperatures when possible, ensure patrons are wearing masks as they enter the business and engage, making sure that their employees wear a mask in serving customers. We have got to do our part in flattening the curve. As of today, the latest numbers that we have is that there are not over 9,000 cases in Cuyahoga County, with a third of those being in the city of Cleveland. And while we've had 77 or so deaths due to COVID, there is no acceptable number of losses with regard to this virus. We do know that those with health complications and seniors are extremely susceptible to fatality. because of this virus, and we have seen a spike, like the mayor said, in ages of 20 to 29, closely followed by those the age range of 30 to 39. Now, from being out speaking with that 20 to 29 group, especially on West 6th Street and throughout the flats, we've seen people wear a mask, but we've also come in contact with folks who don't take the virus seriously. And it's important to know that even though someone may survive COVID, that there are long-term effects that medical professionals are urging us to consider as to why precautions need to be made, like wearing a mask, washing hands, practicing good personal hygiene, and engaging in social distancing. That COVID has the potential to affect lung function, heart and cardiovascular function, kidneys, digestive tracts, and brain and neurological systems. So even though folks may survive COVID, there are long-term effects that have to be considered as we combat this virus and work to flatten the curve. Being where we are right now is an absolute sense of urgency. And as the mayor has stated, we are engaging in looking for civil penalties, civil remedies to making sure that folks and encouraging folks and businesses to use masks and practice the social distancing as the medical professionals have stated is necessary. We have seen a rise in crime also during this pandemic, and our public safety officers, working hard to ensure that they are protected so that they can go home to their families and not bring COVID home. They are being very cautious with engaging with the public. It is extremely important that we work to reduce crime in our community, which is something that is on the community. We've stated before that public safety is not the answer, but our citizenry is the answer to reducing crime in the community, so that our public safety officials can concentrate on working on its effort to flatten the curve and getting COVID out of our community. With that, I'll turn it back to the mayor.
Chief? Is Chief there?
No, I think we lost him.
Okay. Well, we'll go straight to questions then.
All right, Mayor. This is Dirk, the moderator, and I do apologize for the confusion there. I, for some reason, got dropped off the call, but I'm back now, sir. So again, if anyone has a question, *3 on your telephone keypad is how you get into the queue to ask a question. Our first caller is Gloria. Hello, Gloria. Welcome to the call. What is your question? Hello, Miss Gloria.
Yes. Well, I've been on the telephone telling everybody about my questions like 3 times. You all haven't got my question yet? I would like to know when you have these restaurants and everything downtown, I think they should have a mask on. If they don't have no mask on, no service. If you catch them the first time, a warning. Catch them the second time, $250. Catch them the third time, I think you should be like 2 weeks in jail. Maybe they'll take it serious. Won't nobody take it? These young people is not taking it serious.
Mm-hmm. Well, Gloria,
all of a sudden it was old people dying. See, now it's the young ones dying because they're not taking it serious. I'm afraid. I'm scared. I'm not going to lie. I'm scared. Well, Gloria, only time I go out is go out and get me something to eat, grocery, and I'm back at home.
Well, Gloria, if I can answer your question, and you're absolutely right in terms of the severity of this and the lack of young people to recognize that severity. You're absolutely right. And as they say sometimes people don't believe fat meat is greasy, right? So you got to show them. And so that is what we're doing. We're looking at this, and we're saying that we're at a point where we have to take more drastic action because the voluntary stuff that people have relied on is not working. And as a result of that, we're going to have to focus our resources on where we can have the greatest impact, and that is where people gather, large gatherings, where they're in close proximity, right, and they're in some closed environment. And restaurants are one of those. And part of the proclamation going forward is that the only time someone should be in a restaurant, or a bar or a club or someplace like that, and not have a mask on is if at that moment they're drinking or at that moment they're eating, because you just can't eat or drink with the mask on. And so, but when they're not eating and drinking, they have to wear a mask, and the number of people who they can allow in those establishments is going to be cut at minimum in half. And they have to present a floor plan as to how many people can be in there and be safely in there with social distancing, as well as have on masks, except for when they're eating or drinking. So I'm in complete agreement. And the reason why we're taking this action, again, is not because we want to. It's because we have to. If we continue to ignore the reality of what's going on, then the spike that's occurring now will push us into level 4, which is the most extreme level in terms of infection, which I believe at that point will probably mandate that we close businesses down again. So I'm in agreement with you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Next on the line, we're joined by Chanel. Chanel, go ahead with your question. You are live on the call.
Good evening, Mayor. My question is, I'm a little confused about when we're supposed to wear masks, because the first thing that I saw that you signed said when we're in the car with one or more persons. Mm-hmm. Were you referring to the kids that I live with and which I have to take care of? Right. Or well, I'm confused. Mm-hmm. I'm just confused about the whole mask. Do we have to wear it when we're outside?
Well, I will let Director Howard, he may know the details of the legislation, but I will say to you that that I know that whenever you have family members, there's some exception there, but whenever you are out in public and you're engaging with people who are not necessarily family members, then there is an expectation that you will have to have a mask on. If you're going to the grocery store, or if you're going to Home Depot or a restaurant or someplace like that. But Director Howard, according to the legislation and the exemptions and things, do you have that interpretation for her?
I do, Mayor. So first, I'd like to address the automobile. Mayor, you're absolutely correct. When you're in an automobile with your family and you're traveling in your car with your family, you know where each other have been. You live with each other. You interact with each other. You're not required to wear a mask when you're in your car with family. So if you're driving to church or you're going to the store with a parent or your child, you are absolutely urged, yes, to wear a mask, but you do not have to. If you are driving an Uber, ride sharing, Ubers and Lyfts, those persons are required to wear a mask. If an officer conducts a traffic stop of an Uber or a Lyft and no one in the automobile is wearing a mask, the driver is held accountable, as are the people inside. Our Ubers and Lyfts and the ride-sharing companies, they often pick people up from the airport, take people to the airport. They travel to and from places where it's highly susceptible that COVID can be contracted. So we are taking that into consideration. With regard to if you're walking outside, working in your yard, you're in an environment where you are able to social distance, you do not have to wear a mask. If you're walking down the street by yourself, you don't have to wear a mask. But if you're in groups of people and you are walking in close proximity to each other, yes, you need to wear a mask. If you are in an environment where you are unable to social distance, you need to wear a mask. If you're in Target or Walmart, and as the mayor said, in a restaurant or a bar or club, and you're not eating and drinking, you should have a mask on. These are the provisions that are going to help us flatten the curve. We do not want to issue citations. We truly would prefer cooperation from businesses and citizens alike. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much, Director Howard. Next, we've got a question from online, and Trudy asks, what is being done about the drug activity in the neighborhoods? That is a huge source of a lot of the crime. Is there a specific number to call to report?
I'll start with that, and then if the chief is on, if he's got back on, he can then respond, or Director Howard. The issue of just crime itself is really crime is a manifestation of some underlying things. It's more like a symptom, but there's some underlying issues going on that result in criminal activity. Now, that being said, that's a long-range approach. So the immediate thing that people look for, and they have a right to and expect, is how do the police respond, and what are you doing in the immediate sense to address the crime? And so I will let Director Howard and the chief answer that. But also tying that into the COVID side, usually people who are in a mode of not following the rules and just doing what they want and feeling invincible, sometimes you find that drug dealing and criminal activity in the failure to comply with prevention measures for COVID go hand in hand. So it is something that we have to address just in terms of criminal activity and this disruption of quality of life, but it also adds to this other aspect as people are moving about and doing criminal activity. They tend not to follow any other rules that you have too. Director or the chief, if the chief has gotten back on.
No, Mayor. It's just I'm here though. We are constantly working with our law enforcement partners. So what I mean by that is Cleveland Police Department, law enforcement agencies from our sister cities, our adjoining cities, the federal government, federal agents, to combat drugs in the community. That is a constant fight. And as the mayor stated, those efforts touch the immediate effect of drugs in the community. But there's a systemic issue that's larger that has to be addressed. But we are combating drugs, drug trafficking, drug use, and if you see drug activity going on in your community, you are urged to call your local police district and report that so that we can respond.
And if I may add to that, the number that was given by Dirk, the 664-2900, is the mayor's action line. And you can then communicate to the mayor's action line some specifics as to what you know if you are not inclined to talk to the police directly. So if you call the mayor's action line, 664-2900, and give the young ladies there some specifics, then they will follow up and then be the ones who wind up giving that to the police.
Hey, Mayor, I'm back on the call. It's Chief Williams.
Okay, Chief. There was a question, Chief, around drug activity and who did they call and what's the strategy around crime in general, but particularly drug activity.
Yes, and I heard part of the Director Howard's response, and he's right. Call your local policing district. That should be your first call. Because that district commander has resources that they can send out to that call, whether it's uniformed personnel or even undercover detectives, to see what's going on. We want you to make that call so we actually get that address, location, those individuals into our system. And that way we can do what's called special attentions. Again, we can assign it to our vice and our narcotics detectives. But we can also make sure that those marked zone cars, the black and white zone cars, the guys and girls in uniform can get by there, and that pushes that activity down a little bit when those cars are constantly through that area. But you can also call our narcotics unit, and if you call 623-5000 and ask for narcotics, they can connect you with that. But we are working on all levels, state, federal, county, and local, to combat drug activity as well as violent crime in the city. And we have some initiatives coming up that we'll be announcing here in the next 3 or 4 weeks that kind of speak to that. But nothing helps us out with drug activity and violent crime more than citizens and their calls and their information that they give our officers so that we can directly respond to the issues that you have out there.
Thank you, Chief Williams. Next, we've got coming to the line, Pamelina. Pamelina, welcome to the call. What is your question for Mayor Jackson? Looks like we just lost Pamelina. Moving forward, we've got Betty joining us. Betty,
hello.
Welcome to the call. What is your question?
I'd like to know about what we're going to do about the youth killing each other up in the neighborhood on a daily basis, the shooting, the crowd gathering. What do we do? What do you do to the right and pass them?
Well, I'll let the chief respond in terms of police. What you point out is really is like just like the COVID-19 is a pandemic. What you're pointing out is a pandemic, and that pandemic was here before COVID-19, and the death rate in regards to homicides and or felonious assaults where someone doesn't die with youth involved is really is the same thing. It's a pandemic. Is off the chart, and what we found is several factors. One is the availability of guns, and as you know, these young people can pretty much pick a gun up off the street, buy a gun with the drop of a hat. It's not a difficult thing. So the availability of guns in the hands of younger people who feel invincible and don't have maturity and things like that is a very dangerous proposition. And so there's a lot of guns out there on the street in the hands of young people. The other thing that we've noticed is that many times young people are of the notion that they have to have a gun because of the environment that they're in. And many of young people is just like post-traumatic stress. They're traumatized. Either they have committed a violent act, they've been a victim of a violent act, or they are live in an environment that is violent. And as a result of that, they have very paranoid kind of demeanor sometimes, and they tend to want to protect themselves, and they wind up with guns, and they use those guns. So we've attempted to try to shortcut that trauma side, post-traumatic stress side, by bringing into our rec when our rec centers were fully open, trauma coaches. These were licensed social workers or psychiatrists who would come in, and they would help to identify young people who were suffering from some traumatic experience or some post-traumatic stress experience, and attempt to work with them and their families to get assistance to them, and then that way attempt to pull that young person out of having to believe that they have to carry a gun or have to be violent themselves just to survive. So we worked on that end. But again, those are long-term solutions. So the immediacy is, what do we do with young people who are killing each other, and how do we address that in a police way? The chief can talk to you about.
Yeah, ma'am. As the mayor stated, the long-term goal is to stop folks from carrying guns that shouldn't carry them in the first place. That gets us to the point where we have all these shootings and homicides. But in the short term, it's about enforcement. Although here in the city, we don't believe, enforcement is the only action. We can't arrest our way out of a problem that has a lot of causes, not even related to breaking the law. It has a lot of systemic causes with education and a ton of other things we can talk about. But just like the prior caller, in the immediacy, the thing that helps us to better combat violent crime, especially youth and guns, is to get that information, to get the information to our guys before a shooting actually happens, because like the mayor says, these kids can go and pick up a gun anywhere. And for the most part, people know the people in the neighborhood that are carrying guns. So if we're able to interdict that and get those guns off the streets, then that's less of an opportunity for somebody to actually use that gun. So we concentrate a lot on gun interdiction, on trying to stop the people out there actually carrying guns so that they don't use those weapons. But the mayor is correct. You know, the long-term problem is, you know, why does a kid feel that they need to have a gun in the first place? And how do we deal with those factors early on in a kid's life and early on in our neighborhoods so that when that kid reaches 16, 17, 18 years old, there isn't a need from their perspective to actually have a weapon.
If I can add to that briefly, is that violence begets violence. You know, when our children grow up in surrounded by violence in a violent household or a violent community, that's what they learn. Is they learn violence. So, you know, public safety has to do its part, but we need community engagement. We need positive parenting. We need positive mentorship. This has to be a whole solution. Police and community engaged with these young people. We see upticks in violence in the summer because school is out. We have to occupy these young people. Our rec centers are opening. We need people to be engaged with these young people to show them a different way. Until we solve the violence in our community, violence is going to be with us.
Thank you for that added information, Public Safety Director Howard. Our next question comes from online, and Brenda writes in, people on the bus aren't taking the mask mandate seriously. They aren't wearing them at all. Can anything be done to stop this foolishness?
I'll let Director Howard answer the question in terms of what our proclamation says, but I believe the enforceability of that really does come through if it's public transportation through RTA, and there is the ability to cite in that regard because there's requirements associated with that. Director Howard?
That's correct, Mayor. RTA has their policy or is rolling out their policy with regard to citing people on the bus or not servicing people on the bus who don't comply with wearing a mask. If they are not wearing a mask on the bus, they'll likely be asked to get off. If they're not going to wear one, they're not going to be able to get on. But RTA is coming out with their policy. So if you see someone not wearing a mask, you can communicate with the bus driver. Maintain social distance from the person, and that's probably the most effective way is to maintain. You work to maintain social distance from folks who are not wearing masks on public transportation.
Thank you very much. Next, we're going to a caller. We've got Kim joining us now. Go ahead, Kim. You're live with Mayor Jackson.
Hello. I was calling because I have a question. The COVID virus is spreading so fast in Cleveland, and I want to know why. Are they sending the kids back to school other than online? Most of these kids live in Cleveland staying with a grandparent, and now they're going to go out to that school and bring that virus back to their grandparents. And I'm one of those grandparents, and I want to know why they go to school other than online.
Well, your question is the right question. And that is something that is being hotly debated on the national level. As you know, the Secretary of Education has basically threatened people, school districts, that if they don't open up their schools, then they are subject to the loss of some funding that the federal government may be providing. So it's a strong arm message. But at the same time, at the state, let's say state of Ohio, the governor has allowed for the various districts to use options and to basically decide for themselves. And I know for a fact that the superintendent of the Big 8 school districts in Ohio would have rather that they've been told what to do as opposed to leaving it up to each district's discretion. Now, let me put it in another context, too. You're absolutely right that, as you know, whenever there are colds, these kids' nose be running and stuff like that, and they go home if they got the flu or cold, and they give it to whoever they give it to, right? But that's not COVID-19. If you are an older person with underlying ailments, then you got a problem when a child comes home, not only in terms of you can't keep social distance from the child all the time, they're living with you, and not only that, they're touching everything. So you're touching it too. So the virus is going to be everywhere. So the question becomes, as they're looking at, let's take Cleveland Public, preventing the spread of the virus. And so there's this hybrid currently talked about now as to some people going, some people doing online. But I will tell you that if we go to the next level, which is the worst level, then I'm confident that the superintendent will consider whether or not anybody. Yes.
Here we go, sir. We've got Bernita on the line. Go ahead with your question, please.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. I've got maybe a question and a comment.
Okay.
Let's see. In case, let's see, there have been, I think because of over the weekend, there have been parties and things like that has to do with, maybe, parties, and then there was something at a bar that was going on this weekend in my neighborhood. And I think people were inside and possibly outside wearing a mask. And I mean big parties of adults and older adults, maybe anywhere between 40 and 60. And there were young people down the street that had a party for me, and I don't think very many of them were wearing masks. How do you enforce something like that? Because myself, I do have a immuno problem, so I wear my mask. I carry my the stuff that, you use to wipe your hands.
Whichever you need.
Right. And some gloves also. But, I just see people in that, and it just cringes because nobody's listening to anyone. And this is a question probably, I've heard the others ask. How do you all enforce that and send police out?
Can I answer that?
Sure.
What we do is we treat them the same, whether you are older adult or a younger adult. We treat them the same. Now, what happens if you have older adults who are more conscious about their vulnerability and they wind up wearing masks, but the party is still a big party and that bar or that club is over capacity, then we will close that bar or club down, and we'll move all those people out and tell the owner, either you only allow the number of people in here who are authorized based on the proclamation, which would be less than half of their original capacity, or you can't operate. And the same thing would go to the younger place where they're wearing masks. So we treat them both the same. And so because you have two issues here, let me finish this part. You have two issues. You have the younger people who are not wearing masks and breathing in each other's face. Then you have older people who may be wearing masks, but it's too many people in the establishment. So both will be treated according to what the rules are. The rules are that only a certain number of people can be in this establishment based on the social distancing plan that they have. Anybody over that will have to leave, or if they're not made to leave by the owner, then they will be closed down. And that they have to have a mask on except when they're eating or drinking. So that would apply to both the young crowd and the old crowd. Now, with the young crowd that didn't have a mask, and they were probably overcrowded too, then there would be citations based on that in terms of capacity and not wearing masks. Director Howard, do you have any other comments on that?
I do. If in the environment of businesses, if someone's not wearing a mask and a business owner tells them to put one on, they refuse to put one on, the business owner can contact law enforcement, can contact the Cleveland Police Department, and a trespass citation will be issued. That is because that patron is there, for example, in a department store or in a restaurant, receiving services from the business. And if the business requires a mask as a condition of receiving that service, they're allowed to tell the person, you need to put a mask on. Please put a mask on. If they don't put a mask on, they're trespassing. That means that they have broken, I guess, the contract of service to the benefit of being there is in conjunction with having a mask on. If folks are having parties, mass gatherings, same thing as before. You can call law enforcement and apprise them of the mass gathering so that they can respond. Again, the safety of the citizens is paramount to all of public safety.
And if I can add to that, if you call law enforcement, good. If, however, is something that happened, like right now you're telling me this, I would like for you to call our mayor's action line at 664-2900 so that they can be given the location, the name and location of the establishment, so that can be given to the health department and the public safety department, so they can then go out one day and just check it out to see if, in fact, they are not complying with the proclamation. Now, City Hall is, as you know, we're on a schedule of being open on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and then everything is long distance with employees, and there's no public allowed at this time. And we intend to, as we do our, do what we have to do to create social distance and do the protocol for entering, then we'll start allowing the public in probably sometime in August. Once we do what we got to do to ensure a safe social distance and a protocol. So if you call at 664-2900 and you get an answer machine, it's because the ladies who work in that nurse action line, they are only there on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Now but if you leave the message, they'll either pick it up at home, you call in, or if you call tomorrow and give them the specific name and address of the place, what they would do is hand it over to the Department of Health and hand it over to Department of Safety, and then they will know that this place is a place that they should be looking at, and then they'll take a visit this weekend to see what they're doing.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Next up, we've got John joining us on the line. Go ahead, John. You're live on the call. What is your question?
Hello, Mayor. This question is directed at you.
Yes.
As you know, crime is up quite a bit. Murders are up.
Right.
I'd like to ask you what happened to the DARE program, and I'd like to ask you when are we going to get more police and more funding for the police, and have you, as a public servant, acknowledged the police more in your public broadcasts? These gang members know what's going on. The consent decree and so on has put a handcuffs on the police department. They know that. This isn't rocket science.
Well,
we've got to do something.
Let me start off by saying that the consent decree does not put a handcuff on the police department, because I won't allow it to. And the chief will tell you that I have allowed him to hire hundreds of police officers above what they were just a few years ago. As a matter of fact, we just graduated a class of over 70 not too long ago, and we'll continue to try to bring police on so that attrition doesn't eat into their rank and file. And at the same time, again, the consent decree doesn't prohibit us or handcuff, because my instructions to the police is to have a strategy, not solely around consent decree, but have a strategy on crime reduction. And when you do that, you will automatically comply with some of the things that are in the consent decree. What the consent decree is about is the relationship between a police officer and the public. And so what that says is, as we're doing training on various things like use of force, bias-free policing, constitutional policing, what it says is, since we're an urban center, we know that when the police go out and do their job, particularly with violent people who are criminals, then they're going to use force. The only question is if that force is excessive or if they have disrespected the community. And the training and the bringing on these new recruits and the culture of the police department is gradually moving to the point where our officers are doing what they need to do in terms of fighting crime, but doing it in a professional and a courteous way. But we put a lot of money in the police, and we'll continue to put money in police, not only in terms of vehicles and technology, but also in terms of numbers of police officers, and we have a very aggressive recruiting program in that regard. So, Chief, you can respond to that in terms of whether or not we're putting. Now, the other thing, one more thing. I'm not going to do this whole notion around defunding the police. That I've been on record before, and I'm on record now. We need the police, and that's who people call. And so we need the police. And then the question becomes, how do we address those other things that are underlining causes of crime? And so I'm not going to divert money away from police in order to feed that or to fund that. We're adding money into that, like I said, in our trauma program, into our educational programs. We're all those kind of things that we're spending other monies in to address the underlying cause of police. But we have increased the money to police. We've increased the number of policemen that we have, and we provided them with the technology and equipment they need to do their job. Chief?
Yeah, Mayor, and John, thanks for the call. Some good points, but I have to re-echo what the mayor said. The consent decree does not handcuff the division of police or police officers in general. The consent decree does make it harder on bad officers to act up, but good officers, it provides them a ton of training, resources, and guidelines in which to do their jobs a lot better. You know, the biggest part of the consent decree process is community engagement. And that's what I require of all police officers, professional, respectful service to our community. And if you do those two things in most instances, you'll be all right. The consent decree makes sure that we provide that professional, respectful service in a lawful, constitutional manner. If we do those things the way we should and in line with our policies and procedures, then we're not going to have officers on trial for committing atrocities and crimes against the public. And that's what good police officers want. They want that training, the guidance, the proper equipment, and the proper backing to get out there and do their jobs the right way. And as the mayor said, we're in an urban environment. There are going to be issues out there, either with police officers or with the public. But if officers are trained properly, if they're instructed properly, if they have the proper tools, then they'll do a better job for us. And just a quick point on the hiring, like the mayor said, we graduated a class the first part of May of 70 officers. Those officers are now out there on the streets of the city of Cleveland. We currently have a class of 45 officers in the academy that will graduate here in about a month and a half. And then we also have plans. We're in the process of vetting to have another class before the fourth quarter or during the fourth quarter this year, sometime in October, November, or December, that'll graduate next year. So like the mayor says, he's allowed Division of Police, Department of Public Safety to hire as many police officers as we can possibly get into academy classes. And we're doing that. And I want to make a pitch for our recruitment section. if you contact Sergeant Leon, Department of Public Safety and Recruitment, she'll put you on the list and give you all the information you need if you want to be a part of the Cleveland Police Department or a part of fire or EMS, any of our other public safety partners. So the only way to be a part of this and to really be a part of the change that we're affecting here in the city of Cleveland, the best way is to be a part of it, be inside the police department. So I encourage anybody that wants to be a police officer in law enforcement. I know it's tough nowadays. Sign up, take a look at it, come to one of our districts and see exactly what being a police officer is all about.
Thank you very much for that, Chief. And we will get back to more live questions as well as a few questions from online in just a moment. But I do want to make sure that everyone is aware, if we don't get to your question during this live event, or you have a question that crops up after this event, you're welcome to reach out to the City of Cleveland via our social media pages, or by calling 311, or using the Mayor's Action Center line at 216-664-2900. Again, the Mayor's Action Center number, 216-664-2900. Now, here's a question from online. Chrisnia asks, have the police thought about creating surveys for the community to see what the community needs from the police to decrease mistrust?
Chief?
Yeah, I'll take that. We've done that in the past. Right now, in the consent decree process, the monitoring team itself, along with the Department of Justice and the Division of Police, puts out a survey. Our Cleveland Police Commission, as recently as probably a little less than a month ago, actually put out a survey about what's going on in Cleveland and what people would like to see. So, yeah, we've done those things in the past. We plan on continuing to do those things in the future. And there's, folks don't have to wait for a survey. They can always send a note to the Mayor's Action Line. They can call Division of Police 623-5000, actually the Chief's office, leave me a note, send me an email. There are a ton of ways that the public can contact us and let us know some of the things they need. And, this COVID thing has kind of curtailed a lot of our community outreach with social distancing and people not coming out and things like that to community meetings. But you're always welcome to, come to one of your local policing districts and give that commander a list of things that you'd like to see. And that list will make its way to the command staff and we'll take a look at it. But like I say, send an email to the Chief's office, to the Mayor's Action Center, and, we take those things very seriously. And I get a lot of letters and emails and phone calls all the time about how we can make things better. So I encourage people to use those avenues.
Can I add that? Can I just add briefly just that Cleveland Public Safety, the City of Cleveland, we work with the monitoring team. We work with organizations that want positive reforms so that the trust between the community and the police department ever increases. We want more citizens to apply to join the police academy, to join public safety, as the chief said, and police, fire, and EMS. If you're interested, call 216-623-5233. That's Sergeant Leon's contact number. She'd be happy to hear from you, but we engage and we work with our community partners.
Thank you for that added information, Director Howard. Moving on, we've got Lucinda joining us on the call live. Lucinda, go ahead with your question, please.
Hi. I think Mayor Jackson made a comment about larger stores being educated about the coronavirus. My question is, are you educating the smaller, say, corner stores? Because I have gone in a store, no one had on a mask, no one working behind the counter, and none of the people that came in. It was a small store with a lot of people, no one had on a mask.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
go ahead. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I recently went into a Family Dollar, and I asked the manager why no one had on a mask, none of the employees. She said it didn't matter what the mandate was here in the city. It was, they couldn't do anything without corporate approval. They had to get permission or to be told by them that they could wear masks or not allow people in the store that did not have on a mask.
Well, you raise a very good question, and again, I'll let Director Howard answer this, but it's my understanding that they fall under the provisions of our proclamation, and whether they're a large store or small store, there is still the proclamation applies across the board. And in terms of General Dollar, their corporate thing, it is applicable to them, if I'm correct. And you know, if I imagine if they get citations, they don't have a choice of either closing up their stores or complying with proclamation. Director.
Mayor, that's absolutely correct. And you know,
the reason I say it because we're going to have to, since she raised the question and pointed it out, I think that should be at least some random sampling of smaller stores to at least put them on notice of what they have to do, and as well as these larger retailers like General Dollar and things like that. Go ahead.
Absolutely, and I took note of that, Mayor, and we will add those folks to our outreach and engagement to educate these small stores, these small businesses on the requirement of wearing masks. And while a person may say that they can't do it because of the corporate entity, under this proposed legislation that's going to be going to council, those businesses will receive a fine, a citation with a fine of $3,000 for the first incident and $5,000 for everyone thereafter. So there will be
as the corporate entity.
As the corporate entity.
Yeah, not the individual, but as the corporate entity. That's right.
Absolutely. Right. Not the individual, the corporate entity.
Mm-hmm.
So it is behooved of the corporate entities to require their patrons, those who are coming in for services, to wear a mask. And if any establishment is not wearing a mask, requiring mask wearing, as the mayor stated, call the mayor's action line, and so that it can be brought to our attention, and we can work with those business entities.
Mm-hmm. And the mayor's action line and the health department, because they're and I don't know what number they have to call there, but we'll get it to people.
All right. Next up, we've got Mrs. Wade joining us. Go ahead, ma'am. You're live with Mayor Jackson.
Yes, thank you so much for taking my call and my question. Just listening at the beginning of the call when you were stating that you are going to, or, you know, the police department is going to do a more targeted approach as far as with the mask. With the bars and the restaurants and stuff. I'm just trying to understand in terms of, are you all planning to have cop cars waiting outside of the restaurants, or, you know, because I'm just asking because it just seems like it could turn into a situation where, you know, it'll go south real quick, especially if you're dealing with people that are a little intoxicated,
right.
You know, just right. Turning into something that it doesn't have to be, you know.
Well, let me answer that. And the question is, we're not going to have a car out there. There will be people who have the right disposition to deal with this kind of stuff, because it's not the police, is also fire, and it's the health department. So let's take an example, and then Director Howard, or the chief, you can then follow up. Let's say an example. They're not going to have a car sitting out there, and neither are they going to go door to door in these establishments. They are going to be doing probably some random checking, and they will be doing those random checking along with looking at where complaints are coming from. So if you have an establishment where we know that people are complaining about it, then you can be rest assured that whoever needs to go there will go there and check that out. Then there'll probably be some random checking of things and walking in to see how things are going and if somebody is not doing what they're supposed to do or if they are doing what they're supposed to do. But no, there won't be a car sitting out there doing that. Now, let me say to you, this focus is in order to be the most effective and efficient because, again, we're not telling people just because we're not focused on just somebody walking down the street that they shouldn't wear a mask. We're saying the proclamation requires you to. It's just that it is more effective and more productive if we have a systematic and strategic approach to it. And that is why we're taking this approach. But it doesn't let the other people off the hook. They're still required. And there will be probably times when people will be cited and given a civil penalty of $25, even though they're not in one of those establishments, because they are required to have a mask on. But our concentration will be one that we believe is more effective in preventing further infections and to help flatten the curve in terms of infection. But Director, you can talk about the process of how do you, is it complaint driven or is it proactive and you just out there? How do you do that?
It's a collaboration, Mayor. We're starting off with sending invitations to business owners to meet with public safety, the health department, our law department, our public safety department to discuss what they need to do to decrease COVID. Again, requiring wearing of the mask and social distancing. We will have law enforcement will be engaged in community policing. They'll be out in the community. They'll be doing random checks. Businesses will have to post their COVID occupancy number in plain sight so that law enforcement knows how many people are permitted to be in the business as its occupancy is adjusted for COVID protections. If anyone has any complaints, call the health department, call the mayor's action line so that we can respond. So this is a collaborative community effort to flatten this curve.
And if I can add to that, informing us, since we're not going to be able to be everywhere at all times, and there are other things going on in the city that we have to address in terms of crime and other stuff. The police won't just be dealing with this. It's just sole responsibility. So having the information, and believe me, we keep the data, and we know where the major complaints are, and it's pretty consistent about who people are complaining about and what those violations are. And those major violators are flagged, and they will be visited. And then there's, as the director said, random proactive thing is just going out, checking and see how you're doing, those kinds of things.
Thank you, Mayor. Next up, we've got Diane joining the call. Hello, Diane. Welcome to the call. What is your question?
Yes, Mayor. Okay.
Yes.
I'm wondering why has it taken you like 20 years to address the problems, the crime in Cleveland? I've been here for 20 years. I mean, it's like you're bringing this up because of the pandemic. I mean, you know, here in the Glenville area, I've been here. I've never seen you here ever. Only once when you ran for re-election. Okay, here you can't even sit on your front porch. Okay, and then you're going to have the cops, call the cops for someone not wearing a mask. Don't you think they have enough to do? I mean, couldn't some other entity do that? I mean, and it's so filthy here. Dirty, garbage everywhere. You can't get nobody to clean nothing up. They tear down buildings and don't even take all the debris up.
Okay.
Where else can you do that? Other than the city of Cleveland that you're supposed to run.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm angry. I'm mad. Go right ahead.
You've been here 20 years. I've been here 74 years.
And
And hold on. You. I was respectful to you to ask your question, and I give you.
You know, I've been waiting years to talk to you. You never answer the callback number. Never.
Oh no.
You've never.
Again, I'm not going to argue or debate that. What I want to do is answer your question, and I want to point out to you that where I live is no different than where you live, and because I don't live in anywhere but in the inner city of the city of Cleveland all my life, so the things that you are facing are the same things that I have faced, whether it be with my family or with anybody else. So the same thing that happens in any part of this city happens to me and the people I care about too. So I take a personal interest in ensuring that I do my job, and I do my job in such a way that it helps to improve the quality of life of people. That I do. And now, when you make decisions and when you take on these responsibilities, you're not going to please anybody, and it's not my. You're not going to please everybody, and it's not my intent to. My intent is to do what I believe is right for the city of Cleveland. I'm not a glad handler. I'm not going to go around patting people on the back or skinning and grinning in your face. But I will address the issues that are affecting you because they're affecting me and who I care about too. And so that's what I have committed my public life to for the last 30 years. That's what I've committed to, and that's what I have done. And in terms of in Glenville and investments in Glenville, whether it's economic investment or whether it's service investments, we pay particular attention to Glenville because Glenville has come up in terms of data, as terms of the social determinant as a place where we need to invest certain activities because of the distress that is going on there, whether it is the focal point of our lead abatement and our lead safe home Cleveland program where we have money specifically for Glenville, whether it's the epicenter of our neighborhood initiative to attempt to rebuild a neighborhood that we focused on Glenville, to get investments there, to build houses there, whether it is the repairing of the streets and things like that, and the capital improvement there, all of those kinds of things that we do. And we do them based on need. I don't, this is about equity. It's about equity. There was a time when mayors put resources and put efforts in where they believe their vote came from or where they believe somebody liked them or not. I don't do that because there are parts of the city that I wouldn't put any money in if I put it in based on whether or not people like me or not. I do it because it's the right thing to do. And there are some areas of the city of Cleveland that are more problematic. They have more systemic problems that are not just produced by a mayor or a councilman. These are systemic things that have gone on for decades, and that we're attempting to address those things. And we put a lot of energy, effort, and focus in that. Now, whether or not that is accepted to you as an answer is another question. But I will tell you, it's an honest answer.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Next on the line, we've got Melvin. Hello, Melvin. Welcome to the call.
Hello?
What is your question? Yes.
Hello?
Yes, sir. You're live. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, Mayor, I see you're getting a lot of really questions from a lot of racist type people. They don't give a shit about what you're talking about. And this is the thing that you're getting. I'm gonna be serious, but I'm an older Cleveland gentleman, and the thing you keep talking about the police, that is not the issue in this city. I've been here 80-some years. That is not the problem. First of all, you got a whole police force of white men come from out of town. You got the EMS, all white. The firemen, all white. You have to turn around and get to that first. And you're not going to solve any crime until you, to some city, set up what you call a neighborhood type militia group, a watch group. Give some of these kids you talk about some money to help walk and give them some outfits, some clothes to wear, to walk the street and report things in the neighborhood. But long as you keep adding police, which is most of white guys here to these cities, these guys come here and take all the damn money out of the city and take them back to their neighborhood and make their neighborhood. A black man can't even go there. You could be work off, and don't even try to go around it to be nice about it. This is the problem you have in Cleveland. I've been here for 70 years, and then I come from Georgia. I done seen this shit over and out the boy. And the problem is not no police, and like the fund, it's a defund, not defund. Take some money, give to some of these kids out here hungry every day, down to the shelter that walk these damn streets all day with nothing to eat. And some of these nuggethead calling you about the virus, which is good. But concentrate on that. Give these kids some money, set up some funds. They call it defund. Yeah, defund, that's what you want to call it. And give the kids some money in these neighborhoods to spend a little money on themselves. Give them little outfits to wear, to walk around and report things themselves like that. Like you said before, you cannot turn around and get police to do everything. The white police boys come here every year, every day, and they don't give a shit about Cleveland. And you all should know they don't give a shit about you. That's just where it is. That's just where this city is. And most of them, not just Cleveland, Chicago, New York. That's why you have the killing, not just the guns. Some of these people have no hope. People get up in the damn morning, look in the refrigerator, there's nothing there. So they know they're in for a long damn day. You see the young boy walking the street, the young children with nothing to eat. This is your problem. Get some money into the neighborhood. Defund the damn police. That's what it takes. It just pisses me off. We keep going around, and don't keep trying to charge people about no virus, charging no money. People ain't got no damn money no way. Period. People ain't got no damn job. So don't turn around and cater it to some of these white guys that calling in talking that crazy ass, racist ass shit in their own way about the police.
All right, I got you, man. I got you.
Okay, thank you. That pissed me off.
Well, I appreciate your call. Let me just say, where you are absolutely right is that if you don't give people a stake in the game where they believe that this system is functioning in a way that benefits them and who they care about, if you don't do that, then there is no obligation or commitment they have to the system. So what do they care? What do they care? So you have to, part of what we're doing, this is why I was telling the young lady, part of what has to happen is that we have to invest in a way that invests in people, and particularly young people. And your approach to having young people have a stake by being a positive impact and a positive influence in how that environment, because once you do what you suggested in terms of that young person saying, this is my neighborhood, they're not going to allow but so much stuff to go on there. But if that neighborhood and this system does not provide them just a minimum of life in terms of quality of life and an opportunity for prosperity, then they figure they can just do what they want because it doesn't matter. They'll tear it up because it is of no benefit to them. So that is part of what we're talking about doing. It's not catering to them. It's taking the reality of how this thing works. I'll give you another example. You talk about the makeup of the police department. That is why we have put a lot of effort into recruitment that will allow us to bring on to the police department people who look like the same people who they have to serve on a daily basis. And when that happens, the people who look like the same people who they have to serve on a daily basis, they then have an understanding of their culture, how that culture behaves, how it thinks, and all of those kinds. So so part of our dealing with the police department and giving them the resources they need, part of that is also bringing in people who are needed in order to address the population of the city of Cleveland who looks like that, who's reflective of that population. Having them live in the city of Cleveland would be even a better proposition, which we used to have before the state passed a law and the state Supreme Court allowed them to get away with it, said that we couldn't require people to live in the city of Cleveland because they work for the city of Cleveland. Before that ruling, which I think maybe about a decade ago, before that ruling, we had the right to require that if you worked in the city of Cleveland, worked for the city of Cleveland, you had to live here. So if you were a police officer or fireman or EMS or even a waste collection or custodian, if you got a job with the city of Cleveland, you had to work here. But the state legislature got lobbied. Supreme Court supported them. So now people can come from anywhere, come to city of Cleveland, get a job, don't have to live here. And when you have that kind of separation, then people can go home to the comfort of their environment, which is distinctly different from the adverse environment that people have to live in here. So they can escape, but we cannot escape. And that's why the young lady who was so angry about her living here 20 years, I have no problem with her. And really, I actually say that she has a right to have that anger. But what I tried to give her was a perspective as to how I make decisions and what I do. And that I am not foreign to this because I live among it. I live in the middle of it. And that people who I care about, it affects them as well as it affects other people. And so I have to do my job and do my job in a way that tries to relieve that burden that people are bearing because of a system that is not allowing everybody to be part of it, not allowing everybody to have quality of life, not allowing everybody to have prosperity. And when you fight that beast, you can't come half-stepping. You got to go in with it. And you're not going to make everybody happy, and neither, as you said, sir, will everybody understand what you're doing.
Thank you, Mayor. We've got another question from online. This one comes from Don. And Don asks, when are you coming back to the YMCA?
When I believe it's safer. I worked out the Y, and so, the gyms are back open. But I'm not comfortable yet because this virus is on the uptick, and it's really moving. And like I said, Cuyahoga County is the third level, one level below the worst level. And one of the things that I know is that when you go to a gym and you sweat and all this other kind of stuff, it can be a pretty challenging world. Particularly, like I said, I'm 70. I'll be 74 this year, so I fall into that category of older people who are more at risk than other people. So I'm gonna be a little bit more cautious when I get back there. But I'm coming back.
Thank you for that answer, Mayor. And I'm being told that we have time for just one more question. And this one, we're bringing Willie on the line. Go ahead, Willie. You're live with Mayor Jackson. Hello, Willie. Willie, are you there, sir? Looks like we lost Willie. Let's move on.
Okay.
We've got Kim now. Kim, welcome to the call. What is your question, ma'am?
Hello?
Yes, Kim, you're live on the call. What would you like to know?
Do you have something on? Do you have a TV or radio on?
I've been in the mayor's district before he even became a mayor, and he is doing a good job in what he can do. Because I remember he walked door to door, knocking on the elderly house and telling them to sign up for the roof, sign up for your stairs, sign up getting your house fixed up. You need things. And I have seen him over the years really do the best he can with this city. He needs help from the people to do their part too, and employees to work for him to do their part, because he is a good mayor, and I vote for him every time. And I know, because I've seen it when my kids was little. And I'm the person grandmother that called about the kids in the schools, because going to the school district. And I hope when they do decide if they make some of them kids go to school, look at their medical record and see which one of them kids are sick and see which one of them kids live with their grandparents. So thank you for having this forum, and I'm looking forward to the next one. And have a blessed day and keep safe.
Well, I appreciate your comment. Thank you very much.
All right, as mentioned, we are coming to the end of this live event this evening. We want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us for this important call with Mayor Jackson. What I'd like to do is ask you, Mayor, for any closing remarks, please.
Well, my closing remarks are basically that stay at home. And if you have to go out for either work or business or pleasure, whatever you choose to do, make sure you wear a mask and keep social distance and constantly wash your hands. I also want to thank those people who called with criticism, because I often say that that 99.9% of the time, people only complain to government officials about what they believe and really are entitled to have. And that is a quality of life and an environment where they can raise their families and be at peace and not have to deal with all of the drama and all of the negativity of our society. So I do not have a problem with the people who call the criticism. When I was elected mayor, I was elected to represent everyone, and I was elected to do for everyone the best I could do to help resolve whatever issues that they have. That's whether they voted for me or not, or whether they liked me or not. So I want those who were listening and who were criticizing to understand that I hold nothing, and that I appreciate your comments and I appreciate your position. And I think it was Frederick Douglass said that when asked if what should you do to get something done, I believe it was Frederick Douglass. He said, agitate, agitate, and agitate. So I don't have a problem with it. Thank you.
Well, let me just echo the mayor's remarks. We do appreciate the opportunity to speak directly with you and to answer your questions. If we were not able to get to your question this evening, you can email communications@clevelandohio.gov. We also ask that you please follow the City of Cleveland City Hall on social media. We will host more of these events in the future to keep you informed on what we're working on and other important updates. Thank you again for joining us this evening. We hope you stay healthy and safe and have a wonderful evening.